Good afternoon. I'm simply sharing some Bible verses that through the years have come to mean much to me. They're really just basic truths that we're all familiar with at some level, but it's really kind of good to reflect on them and dig deeper and kind of sense what God is saying to us in those verses. So I'd like to share one with you right now. It comes from 2 Corinthians 11:3, but I'll read the surrounding verses. Starting with verse 1, 2 Corinthians 11. Oh, that you would bear with me in a little folly. And indeed, you do bear with me, for I am jealous for you with godly jealousy, for I have betrothed you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. But I fear lest somehow, as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. So let's just focus on that one little expression, the simplicity which is in Christ. Now, Paul's saying that he has a real heart of love for the Corinthians, that he's betrothed them to a husband. Now, what he's referring to, obviously, is that the church, all believers in all times, are the bride of Christ. And he's jealous for them. He doesn't want the bride to be distracted from her love for the husband, who is Jesus. And this is really interesting because any time we move away from a practical love and desire to please Christ, we are in a state of idolatry, in a sense. So Paul is jealous that the Corinthian believers would maintain real, wholehearted affection for their husband, for Christ himself. So what does he mean when he says, and I'll please, if I could read it again, I fear lest somehow, as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. So Paul's saying, hey, the best kind of marital relationship is keep it simple. If we're the bride and Christ is the groom, then Paul's just saying, hey, don't let anything distract from our adoration, our love, our sensitive longing in our hearts to please our spouse. That's all he's saying. And he speaks of Adam and Eve. He goes back to the creation. Well, that's exactly what happened in the garden. She and Adam were in a very close relationship with the Creator God. And a test was set before them. Don't eat of the tree of that particular, or the fruit of that particular tree. Well, they did. And they fell for Satan's lie, which is, if you eat the fruit of this tree, you'll be like God. So there's idolatry setting in right away. In a sense, they were espoused to God. But now they've turned away from their simple, clear, loving relationship with God, and now they've made another God. So what is Paul talking about with this expression, the simplicity which is in Christ? Well, I think it's very clear. It's over against complexity. But look at our lives. If your life is like mine, it becomes extremely complex. There are all kinds of responsibilities. There are things I need to do. There are people I need to meet. There is a job to be done. There are responsibilities at home and elsewhere. It all gets very complicated. But that's because, like Adam and Eve, we get distracted. We listen to the lie of the serpent. And the serpent saying, look, you don't really need to trust in God. You can be your own kind of God. And that's exactly what happens. But the antidote or cure for that problem is the simplicity which is in Christ. So what does that look like, the simplicity which is in Christ? Well, perhaps it just boils down to one thought. Who are we trusting? Who am I leaning on for wisdom to make life work day by day? Who am I appealing to help me with the burdens I have to carry? Who is it that I need affection from? The problem with all of us, even though we are believers, is that we're still fallible. We still have a human nature, a fallen nature. And our factory default setting is to turn to someone else other than Christ. So the simplicity which is in Christ really refers to looking to Him alone. We are married to Him as a body of believers. He's our husband. He is the focal point of our adoration and love. The simplicity of Christ solves all kinds of problems. So from a reflective point of view, when the struggles come, the burdens heap up, the complexity arises all around us, our first line of thought is that we get reconnected with Christ. We just think about Him. Our pastor, Godwin, recently said in a sermon, Christ is enough. That's a pregnant statement. Christ is enough. That is a beautiful way to say, seek the simplicity which is in Christ. Now notice Paul says that it's a problem of the mind, so that your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. Well, interestingly, we have the mind of Christ. That means I can think like He does. If I'm not thinking like He thinks, then I'm not engaged in the simplicity which is in Christ. I've taken on burdens that are unnecessary. So Paul says, hey, reflect on your thinking. Is Christ first and foremost in your thinking? Because if He is, He's the solution to everything. He is the all-sufficient one. I trust that you'll find the simplicity that is in Christ a comforting idea to reflect upon. God bless you.